Hello everybody, welcome to the 100 Fantasy Football channel. I'm so happy to be here. If you are here for the first time, my name is Ivan Herrera, and I am so happy that you are here. The mission of this channel is to get you the best analysis so you can be successful in fantasy football. And if we're meeting for the first time, welcome once again. I would really appreciate if you are tuning in right now live on the live stream to hit that like button. It really helps out with the algorithm so that way we can push this out to as many people as possible. And also, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're looking for all the best analysis to be sure that you're successful this season in fantasy football. Travis Etienne is out for the 2021 season, and this is a bummer because he's someone that, of course, a lot of people were excited about. And this piece was written by Michael DeRocco, who actually is a senior ESPN staff writer, and he just shared about how Travis Etienne's Liz Frank injury during the preseason game, and it didn't look that serious when he was limping off. Of course, everyone assumed that he was going to be a little bit banged up, but unfortunately, the worst has come, and that is that he is out for the remainder of the season. So what this naturally does is that James Robinson's value now skyrockets for me. I had him actually originally in that like RB 30 range only because I'm not too happy with the fact that there's a crowded backfield and there's so much uncertainty. And I personally feel that the Jacksonville Jaguars should have maximized by not drafting Travis Etienne. But unfortunately, it went down that way, and now James Robinson has that backfield all to himself. Now I know that Carlos Hyde is there as well, but I just see Carlos Hyde as an insurance policy, and he's pretty solid as it is. I think that he's pretty talented, but he is aging. But I think that James Robinson, being that he brings so much value and he was used really well last season, it would behoove Urban Meyer to do the same thing this year, especially with a rookie running back. But I think also this will also help the stock of wide receiver Laviska Shenault, who has that skill set to be utilized in different ways. So look to see where Laviska Shenault is rising. I have seen him rise a little bit in the ADPs. He's someone I'm actually targeting in drafts right now. He's going in that like 7th, 6th round range. He could be there now that we're entering the last week of August. This is where you see the most fantasy football drafts going down. So he should be there, right? Invest in James Robinson. I will now put James Robinson in that like RB 12, RB 15. There are a lot of injuries going down right now as we're getting into the final week of the preseason. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of key players that would typically be filled into this part of the drafts going down, like a Travis Etienne, more so like, for example, Cam Akers. That was someone that was there in that like mid-second round range, but now even with J.K. Dobbins potentially being out for an extended period of time, he may also cause some people to rise up a little bit. But for now, I will put James Robinson in that RB 12, RB 15 because of the usage that he has. Next piece of news that I wanted to touch in real quick is about Darrell Henderson and now what the trade of Sony Michel does for his fantasy value. Now, Sean McVay, coach of the Los Angeles Rams, did come up with the quote, and he said that Darrell Henderson is still going to play a big role in the Los Angeles Rams offense. This is what I pulled up in this article from Rams Wire, and it says that Sean McVay reiterated that Henderson's role isn't going to change much due to the arrival of Sony Michel, and he's still going to play a big part on the offense. Now, I do buy this. I really do believe this. Now, get ready for the cap or no cap intro, and we are going to get into what Sony Michel does now to that Los Angeles Rams offense. Sony Michel going to the Los Angeles Rams is going to play a huge role into now how you can utilize Sony Michel in this offense. And what I mean by that is that Sony Michel going to Los Angeles is now basically means that they have a solid insurance policy if anything were to happen to Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson, I've always said, doesn't have the build to be a #1 running back to carry that workload, and that's why I wasn't really so sold on him, even with Cam Akers going out for the year. I think Darrell Henderson is going to get a lot of the workload, but I still think that Sony Michel is going to might buy into the value of Darrell Henderson. I still think that's someone that you should target if you are looking to go for a robust running back strategy when you're going into your fantasy football drafts. I would slate Sony Michel to be right now in my rankings. I have him right there in that like RB 30 range. So someone that could be a solid insurance policy. And you know what? One thing I was actually looking and really like analyzing in is he reminds me a lot of C.J. Anderson, someone that wasn't really involved in the passing game that much as a running back, but someone that got a lot of goal line work. And I think Sony Michel's built like that. And I went to go pull up some stats of when C.J. Anderson, who was really brand new to the LA Rams back in 2019 when he was there, what he was able to put up without much experience of that Sean McVay offense. And here are the numbers. If you remember this, in week 16 of 2019, C.J. Anderson had 20 carries for 167 yards and 1 touchdown. And in week 17, he had 23 carries for 132 yards and 1 touchdown. In both games, he was over 20 points in fantasy football. And I think that Sony Michel has that skill set, has the capabilities of really grasping this offense. But if anything were to happen to Darrell Henderson, Sony Michel is an insurance policy that you definitely need to utilize and draft in 2021. Gardner Minshew, who was huge in Jacksonville with the Minshew Mania, is now going to Philadelphia. So Minshew Mania now goes to Philly. He was traded for a conditional 6th-round pick in 2022. Now, I think that this really isn't too much, and a lot of questions have been rising about what this does for quarterback Jalen Hurts, and I think this does absolutely nothing. Jalen Hurts is safe where he's at, of course, barring any injury, barring any kind of terrible play to start off the season, but I feel that Gardner Minshew is just someone that can fill in Jalen Hurts, assuming that Joe Flacco doesn't take that backup role over him. I think that Gardner Minshew has the skill set to run with his legs and to obviously still throw the deep ball a little bit well. So I think that Gardner Minshew is no more than an insurance policy. If you are in a deep league, consider using him in your super flex or your 2 quarterback leagues. Or I would also recommend, if you are maybe in a redraft league, if you have Jalen Hurts, maybe stash him, but I would much rather stash a quarterback like one of the rookies that we're going to be talking about later on, and I wouldn't recommend going for Gardner Minshew other than just deep leagues where there's 14 teams or more. And again, if you are in a super flex or a 2 quarterback league, this is definitely someone you may want to consider, but he's no more than an insurance policy. So as far as what this does for Jalen Hurts, it does absolutely nothing for him this season in 2020. Running back J.K. Dobbins suffered what looks like a PCL injury. Nothing official has been said as of this taping, so we will wait and see what comes out of Baltimore. But if anything were to happen, and if J.K. Dobbins were to miss some significant times, Gus Edwards will now fill in that slot, and he's going to be in a good situation. I wouldn't necessarily draft Gus Edwards where J.K. Dobbins was being drafted at, but I would move him up maybe anywhere in that 4th and 5th round range, considering that Baltimore is a run-heavy offense. And we say run-heavy because it's predominantly led by their quarterback Lamar Jackson. So with that, Gus Edwards will be someone that I was also already targeting as a handcuff, but now with everything going down, and yet, of course, we do not know what has gone down yet. If God forbid, J.K. Dobbins were to miss the entire season, Gus Edwards would now slide up, just like we saw Darrell Henderson slide up when Cam Akers went down. So keep an eye out, stay tuned to the news, and I'll be sure to also go over any updates to see what went on with J.K. Dobbins. But from what it looks like, and of course, I'm no doctor, I'm no professional, I'm no specialist, but based on what I've seen in the past in fantasy football with, like with some of these injuries, it looked like it was a PCL, which again wouldn't be as minor, and he would miss some time still, but it won't be anything as significant as an ACL tear where he'd be out for the entire season. So hopefully that is the case, but for now, be sure to look at where Gus Edwards is going right now in drafts and keep an eye out and be sure to invest in him right now. And also, if you've already drafted, see if Gus Edwards, for whatever reason, wasn't picked up yet, and stash him at your bench, and be sure to at least see if you can get some upside with him now being your potential running back 2 maybe in that range with J.K. Dobbins being hurt. It's no mystery that the 2021 season is filled with a lot of rookie quarterbacks that are bringing a lot of excitement to so many franchises. And when you come to now analyze how they're going to succeed, not only in real football, but in fantasy football, here are some of the things to be mindful of when you are evaluating these players. So what we're going to do is we're going to exclusively go over the players that were drafted in the 1st round. And as a reminder, the quarterbacks that were taken were Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville, Zach Wilson to the New York Jets. We saw Trey Lance go to the San Francisco 49ers. We saw Justin Fields going to the Chicago Bears. And lastly, we saw Mac Jones going to the New England Patriots. So what I did was I went to go see over the last 5 seasons what the first round quarterbacks were doing in fantasy football and the kind of success that they brought to those fantasy football teams. And here are the ones from last season. And I'm going to quickly go through the list of each quarterback that was drafted in the first round and where they ended in fantasy that season. So last season, we saw Justin Herbert, who had an historic first year as a rookie, end as quarterback 9. Joe Burrow, who was on pace to actually be a top 12 quarterback, ended as quarterback 25th only because of the injury. And of course, last year, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins ended as QB 32. In 2019, we saw Kyler Murray end as QB 7, Daniel Jones as QB 23, and Dwayne Haskins as QB 36. In 2018, we saw Baker Mayfield end as QB 16, Sam Darnold as QB 27, Josh Allen QB 21, and Josh Rosen 34, with Lamar Jackson ending it as QB 29. And in 2017, we saw Mitchell Trubisky end up as quarterback 28, Deshaun Watson end as quarterback 26, and Patrick Mahomes, the face of the NFL, it seems like, Patrick Mahomes ended as QB 51, but no, that was only because he only started the last 2 games of the season, filling in for quarterback then for the Chiefs, Alex Smith. And then the last year we're going to be going over is 2016. That's Jared Goff at quarterback 37, Carson Wentz as quarterback 24, and then Paxton Lynch going as quarterback 43, who no longer is in the league. So what we see here is that there isn't much success when it comes to looking at quarterbacks, especially in fantasy football. So the average finish of where we see in the past 5 seasons for quarterbacks that are rookies that are in the first round that were drafted is they're ending anywhere on average as QB 26. Now, the last couple seasons, we have seen some outliers where these quarterbacks have been finishing in the top 10, like, for example, like I just mentioned, Justin Herbert. We also saw that with Kyler Murray. And the thing about Kyler Murray is that he brought a lot of value with his legs because he has a running ability and because that's able to bode well in fantasy football as well. So my main takeaway, when you're in redraft leagues, I probably wouldn't consider drafting a quarterback, especially one of the rookies. Right now, I would consider waiting probably in the later rounds to go for like a Trevor Lawrence, a Zach Wilson, maybe even a Trey Lance, because we know that they're going to be in the starting role a lot sooner than later. Justin Fields with Andy Dalton there, already solidified as a veteran in Chicago. We may not know when he's going to be drafted, but all this to say, I would draft these rookies not to be your starter come week 1. You wait and see what you have with them, especially because some of these matchups won't really be that, favorable for them if they were to start right away. Like, for instance, I think Chicago plays the Los Angeles Rams in week 1. That wouldn't be a situation where I would throw a rookie out there with Justin Fields. Even though he is talented, I would much rather, especially if I was Coach Matt Nagy, go with Andy Dalton because of the veteran leadership that he already brings to the table and because of the experience he has. But someone like, for example, Trey Lance, I think he's going to start probably as early as week 2, week 3, only because you saw how well he was doing in the preseason and you see a lot of hype around Trey Lance, and rightfully so. And then, of course, the 2 that we know that are starting as of week 1 are going to be Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. But then again, I would much rather just wait and see what I have there before I commit to my rookie taking over as my quarterback 1 in fantasy football. So just be mindful of that. Draft them late. I'm not opposed to that. I'm all for stashing them. But if you are in 2 quarterback leagues or in superflex leagues, consider for sure drafting these guys because you're going to need them to fill in that superflex spot or that quarterback 2 slot. But it's going to be tough, especially if we don't know where they're going. So my takeaway, once again, stash these guys in redraft leagues. Keeper leagues, you definitely want to invest in them, especially because they won't cost you that much going into the season the following year. And same thing also in superflex leagues, you definitely want to invest in them because the quarterback value does increase in those leagues anyways. So that is my takeaway with that. Thank you so much for tuning in and for making it to the very end of the video. As always, I encourage you, if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do that. Also hit that like button and stay up to date on all things that I have coming up on the 100 Fantasy Football channel. As always, thank you for tuning in and keep it 100.